A study by the North American Wood Waste Forum stated that over 64 million metric tons of solid wood waste was disposed of in landfills in North America in 2010 alone.
Hi, I'm Natalie Hutchinson, and today we're going to be investigating timber recycling.
While materials like steel and concrete are highly recyclable, a ton of energy is used when reprocessing these materials. Wood is a highly recyclable material. While it is trendy to reuse wood as furniture, flooring, and wall treatments, reusing timber structurally is still not widely accepted because of a few misconceptions.
One of the reasons timber isn't reused structurally is because of confusion with building code.
To clarify this, I visited Scott Caulfield with the Building Codes Division in Clackamas County. He is rewriting code about the reuse of timber to grant access to builders, designers, and inspectors to the sustainable building material.
So I would say historically the reason that it's been a challenge is the code first of all prohibited it, but then additionally there were no guidelines whatsoever for a building official to use, to establish what are the structural properties, how am I going to use it, what are the limitations, and so forth.
As a result of Mr. Caulfield's revision to residential building code, the path to timber reuse is much more clear. Adaptive reuse of building material is a passion of mine. When I was a child, I toured many lovely timber frame houses with my family and learned about adaptive reuse of timber. Timber framers traditionally reuse large members from deconstructed mills and barns. A big obstacle in timber framing is getting approval to use lumber from deconstructed buildings as structural material. The misconception that aged wood is less structurally sound is one of the largest barriers of timber reuse.
A lot of people believe that used lumber or salvaged lumber is in a condition that makes it not suitable for construction. And I actually find that that's not the case. I'm sure when people do demolition, they find areas maybe where there's decay or some other problem. But by and large, if a building has been reasonably well maintained, the condition of the lumber itself is actually quite good. Another misconception is that somehow the lumber, because of its age, is an inferior quality or grade. And in my opinion, exactly the opposite is true. Most of the lumber that we salvage out of buildings today were constructed, 75 or 85 or even 100 years ago. And back in those days, mostly what was being used is old growth Doug fir larch with really straight grain, really kind of premium quality material. And so in many ways, I'd say it was vastly superior to what we see today. So the presumption that the material isn't quite as good as what we would see today is a little bit of a myth.
A local example of the potential of timber recycling can be seen in Longview, Washington. In 1993, the once largest sawmill in the world, Long Bell Mill, was deconstructed by Duluth Timber Company. The timber was then reused to build approximately 200 timber frame homes and in heavy construction projects.
So where does timber from demolished buildings actually end up?
Wood is either directly dumped into landfills or incinerated, and then the ashes are buried in landfills. The underlying issue of ignoring this untapped resource is the sobering fact that we are rapidly running out of resources. As we seek alternative energy sources, we also have to remember that demand drives production. 40% of energy use of buildings comes from the use of raw materials. If we opted for already milled lumber, we could greatly reduce that number. How does this really stack up? On average, about 130 million metric tons of wood-based product is produced annually in the United States. With that in mind, to produce one piece of raw framing wood consumes 310% more CO2 than reclaiming framing lumber from a deconstructed building. While concrete and steel can easily be recycled, the energy used to recycle these materials is far greater than reusing lumber. Additionally, wood is the only building material that removes carbon from our atmosphere during its life cycle. Okay, so now we know the problem, but how can we fix it? 1. Educate your peers. A big reason timber recycling isn't used is because nobody knows about it. 2. Know and work to clarify building code. Scott Caulfield has done some amazing pioneering in his career and paved the way towards reusing timber residentially and is working on clarifying the building code for commercial buildings. 3. Design with reuse in mind. Philosophy is changing in our field. Our scope now goes beyond designing a structure to keep its occupants safe and out of the elements. Now we need to look beyond the lifespan of our buildings. Ask questions like, how can I design this space to adapt to changing needs over its lifespan? How will this building affect its site? How can the materials I'm using be reused? It is easy to be pessimistic about how many challenges we need to overcome to restore our planet. But we live in a time of exciting innovation. Last week, I saw a story about a group reusing chewed bubblegum as soles of shoes. If we can integrate reuse into exciting new discoveries like cross-laminated timber, a carbon-neutral future is in our sight.